Thank you very much. Thanks, Lasky and Corla. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important issue before the House today, and thank you to Minister McEntee for leading for the Government on this issue. Earlier today, the Cabinet met to discuss this pact, which will shape European migration policy for the next decade. As we begin the debate on the pact here in the Dáil, it is important to first of all assure the public that there is a strong cross-government response to migration and to the increased number of people seeking international protection in Ireland. We understand that the Irish people want to see people fleeing war and persecution treated with compassion. That's what we want to do here in Ireland, treat people with compassion. But we also need to see that balance with common sense, which means rules being enforced without fear or favour and systems working efficiently. It means government working coherently, not operating in silos, constantly monitoring the situation, and it means consistent, clear decision-making. Today, the government did just that. We approved proposals from the Minister for legislation to increase airline fines for people who arrive in Ireland without documents. We agreed a proposal from the Minister to increase the number of people working on processing asylum applications, meaning faster decisions for all, which is in everybody's interest. We've agreed to free more Gardaí from desk duty, allowing them to work on enforcement measures. In recent weeks, the Government has taken several measures aimed at managing our migration system better. We've designated more countries as safe, meaning quicker processing times. We've started to means test welfare payments for asylum seekers and begun reducing the payments to those claiming welfare while working. We've increased workplace inspections to prevent people working in the shadow economy. Through our embassy network, we've made it clear to those seeking asylum that access to accommodation is a huge challenge. And shortly, the Government will consider further measures on welfare and related matters. These decisions are necessary. They're necessary to ensure that Ireland is not out of kilter with our European neighbours. Ireland is a country shaped by migration. Our history has been woven by generations of Irish people leaving in search of a better life. That has left scars for families across the country, with every community having its tale of loved ones travelling to different corners of the globe. Today, people come to Ireland in search of a better life for them and their families. As a nation of migrants, Irish people know the benefits that inward migration can bring. We know that migrants are often the people building our homes, building our infrastructure. They're the nursing home workers, they're the doctors and the nurses protecting us when we're at our most vulnerable. We know that migrants are often the people serving us food in our hotels, in our restaurants, in our cafes. They're the people driving our taxis and our buses, our public transport. We know because we were them. This is also our story. We welcome people to our shores because we know that diversity is good not just for our economy, but also for our society. Ireland benefits from immigration. However, Ireland and all countries must have rules that govern our asylum system and rules that must be upheld. Those who enter Ireland and are determined not to have a right to be here will be processed more quickly and will be asked to leave more quickly. 100 people have been prosecuted this year alone for failing to have the necessary documents. Deportation orders signed in 2024 are 83% up on the same period last year. Enforced deportations are 126% up, and voluntary returns are up 129%. There's no disguising that inward migration and the scale of increase is posing challenges for communities and societies across Ireland. We need to be honest about that, and we need to rise to meet those challenges and engage with communities. Towns have seen their populations grow significantly over a short period of time. Many communities have seen hotels and other facilities taken from public use. These were the unfortunate realities of an emergency response to a number of crises across the world. And today we're beginning to see some progress because around 15% of hotels that had been used to provide asylum accommodation have now been returned to communities. And over the summer months and the next number of weeks, more will follow in terms of being returned back to their original use. Communities have often been pitted against migrants when in truth we need a much more managed response and sufficient services for everyone. And I think this is the key thing. Not to try to divide communities versus migrants, but actually put a more sustained system in place. By shying away from difficult discussions, all that happens is the difficult discussions don't disappear. That ground just gets ceded to extremists who are then allowed to shape and misshape the conversation and the debate. By staying silent, we would allow falsehood and lies to become common in conversations. Politicians of the centre must not shirk our responsibilities. We have a duty to engage with people on the realities we're facing. Ireland is not immune from the rise of the far right, and in recent elections, though we shouldn't overstate it, we did see the breakthrough of some candidates. It can't be overstated, nor should it be underestimated. Those who campaign on the politics of division should not be sneered at or ridiculed. However, their narratives should always be challenged. There's an onus on those of us in public office to do so. That includes our politicians, but it also includes people outside of public office, the role of media, the role of social media companies. Over the course of this debate, you may well hear many claims that have little regard to fact. So let me be clear. There are no unvetted mild migrants in this country. There's no implantation of men in Ireland, and Ireland most certainly is not full. Crime does not increase in locations where asylum seekers are living. These are myths, but they're worse than that. They're more than myths. They're designed to sow division. They're designed to spread fear. And it's these narratives that can cause riots in our capital city like we saw just last year. If these untruths are things that have helped bring people to politicians' homes and have helped subject some of our families to intimidation, it is this hate that is poisoning our people across the country to believe that a migrant is the enemy. It needs to be called out because it is this radicalisation that has the potential to spin and spill into violence, and it needs to end. As Taoiseach, it's my absolute priority and my duty to ensure that Ireland has a coherent and effective migration policy and a whole-of-government approach. It's also my duty and obligation to challenge the extremists that claim to speak for this country, generally with no mandate. Waving a tricolour does not make you a patriot. It does not give you the right to intimidate. Equally, though, we must, in these debates, be willing to differentiate between the extremes, between the far rights, between the so-called patriots with their flag waving, and legitimate concerns and questions that people in communities across Ireland have and that deserve to be answered. Ireland cannot allow traffickers and smugglers decide who enter what country while making significant money and depriving the most vulnerable of their dignity and their belongings. So our goal must be to join forces with friends and colleagues in Europe to fight illegal migration. And that's why this migration pact is essential. Let's be so honest. There is no European state that can single-handedly resolve this problem, whether it's a big state or a small state. Those that have tried have actually just seen their migration numbers increase. The pact before us is a united effort from Europe, after excruciating work and negotiation over a long period of time, to ensure that we have full control of and responsibility for our European borders, and that we have a system in place that works across the European Union for once and for all. This means effective registration and monitoring. It means an effective policy against organised crime gangs. It means faster, legally binding decisions. At present, Europe is too divided and too fragmented when it comes to migration policy. By each country just looking at protecting their own border and their own rules, we actually risk ineffective policies that cause fragmentation and secondary movements. Reducing secondary movement in the European Union is of particular benefit to this country. Due to our geographical location, the majority of applicants have already travelled through another EU country. This pact will prevent that. It will allow return operations for all those ineligible for asylum. So, colleagues, in opening this debate, an important debate, and a debate which the government will absolutely give ample time to, let me conclude where I began. Ireland is a compassionate country, full of decent people. Communities have welcomed refugees to their communities, and in the overwhelming number of cases without fuss or fanfare. Communities have shown flexibility. They've shown care to those who need it most. They want their government and their public policy makers to ensure that the migration system is bedded in common sense. And that's what we're working to do across government. But we can't do it on our own. This European Pact provides us with the tools that we need, the laws that we need, the structures that we need to combat illegal migration while protecting the most vulnerable from the clutches of criminal gangs. So over the next 2 days, you'll hear many colleagues across the House proclaim that there's easy solutions to the most challenging circumstances. There are no easy responses in relation to this, but there are practical measures that we can take in the here and now, and this pact is one of them. So let's not fall for the trap that the small far right has created. Let's unite in the face of hatred and division and racism. Let's listen to our communities on their genuine issues of concern, and let's show the citizens of Ireland and of the European Union that we, the policymakers, are capable of building a migration system that works. This pact is the first step of cohesion.